Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Nick from Hexfleet Virulus, coming to you straight out of the Warp in the Eye of Terror for Episode 8 of Warp Surge Radio. Let me know if you're watching, whether you can hear me or not. Tonight we are hitting Episode 8 in order to talk about everything that just dropped in the FAQs and the new points that came out today. So, big day, everything's redone. We already have the rules for 9th edition, but what we don't have is really an idea of what we're going to do now, because all the points changed and everything. We got a bunch of FAQs today, so what the heck are we going to do? So what I'm going to do tonight is, without any BS, I'm just going to go through all 5 codexes for Chaos and the points changes and what I think is going to be good, what I think is going to be bad, and what I'm going to try to do with my list. So before I go any further, let me know in the chat if you can hear me or not. I just want to make sure all the audio is working good. I tested it before the show, but just want to make sure. And before I say anything else, I probably should take a moment, be somber, pour one out for all our renegades and heretics. They are not, from anything that I saw in the Forge World update. So, that's sad. I have a lot of renegade and heretic models. I know it's a popular army, but it has not been supported, so I'm going to talk about the other armies, but that one is not getting covered tonight. Alright, with that out of the way, we all know that Chaos is going to change a lot in the edition. High level, I think Chaos relied on multiple detachments, relied on souping in a lot of different things, and just in general, I think Chaos was really dependent on taking a handful of good units out of each codex and just trying to make it work. And you know what? That's not really going to be possible anymore in the new edition. Instead, you're going to have to probably have either one battalion, or what I've been looking at a lot, even before I knew the points, and especially now that I know the points, is 2 patrols. And maybe even putting, a very small amount of points in whatever my main patrol is with the Warlord, and then putting most of my units in the other patrol, because you can actually pick up a lot if you have 2 elite, 2 fast attack, 2 heavy. And the other benefit is, if you have to spend a lot on points, and most of the Chaos troops I think are not very good anymore, now you only have to take 2 troops across 2 patrols rather than 3 troops in 1 battalion. So I think that's something worth looking at. But before I go completely into 9th edition, I do want to bring up, I'm going in just a couple days to a socially distanced GT. It's a goodbye to 8th edition at my local gaming store, and I'm going to run something extremely stupid. And again, if you're listening to this, let me know if you can hear me, if the audio is okay. I'm watching a chat. But basically, I'm taking advantage of the fact that no FAQs dropped today for Chaos Daemons for the Engine War supplement. We still don't have most of the Psychic Awakening supplements. So what I'm going to do instead is I am going to bring an all demons army that basically is going to spend 18 command points pre-game. I have 18 command points, and I use every single one of them pre-game. So, what does my list look like? Well, this is it. It is thematic and fun and stupid and goofy, and probably would not survive an FAQ even if 9th edition wasn't coming to totally invalidate this list. But this is what I'll be playing at this GT this weekend. It's a Nurgle detachment, a Tzeentch detachment, and a Khorne detachment, all Chaos Demons, and one of each Greater Demon, one of each Demon Prince with wings, and then the basic troops, and 9 Nurglings, 30 Brimstones, and 60 Bloodletters. And what I'm doing is I'm spending 3 command points per Greater Demon to give all of them all of the Exalted traits, and I'm buying all of them an Exalted Relic, which I don't know if that will survive the FAQ either. It's pretty silly, but I played a practice game with it this past weekend, and it actually did very well. So we're going to see. It's a very stupid list, but it's the last chance I'll ever get to run this, and I don't think I'll be playing much Demons in 9th edition unless something changes. So that's just my idea of what I'm going to do. So, yeah. Hey, Michael. Thanks for watching. Thanks for letting me know the sound is good. So, let's go into these codexes one by one, and I'm just going to give my impression. I'm not going to dive into every single point, but I'm going to give my impression of what I think is good, who won, who I'm interested in playing in 9th edition so far, and who I think really suffers. I think overall Chaos could have used some help. Chaos was not doing really that well by the end of 8th edition, or really last year or two, other than goofy kind of shoehorn lists here and there, like Possessed or something. There's just a huge amount of units and all the codexes that you never saw. I'm always honest about that on my page or on this channel, that a lot of the stuff that Games Workshop does just seems to treat Chaos kind of as an afterthought, and a lot of the points throughout 8th edition from indexes to now have reflected that, and some of the codexes too. So let's start with one of the ones that I think actually did pretty well coming out of everything we're going to have in the new edition. So that is Thousand Suns. Interesting thing about Thousand Suns is that they were not really looking that good at the end of 8th edition. Love that tequila for my Renegade and Heretics. May they rest in peace, or the warp, or whatever. I know I just poured tequila into a copper mug for a Moscow Mule, but, you know, I'm broadcasting from the Eye of Terror. This is Chaos. We don't follow any rules, so I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. So the thing about Thousand Suns that's interesting is they got quite a lot of point increases in the last chapter approved, but that also means they didn't really go up that much this time, which is great. So Cultists got hammered like they did for everybody else. Rubric Marines went up from 16 to 18 points, and then Zangors went up from 8 to 9. Zangors are already too expensive. I think everybody knows that. Rubric Marines are maybe not that bad because you want to take 5-man squads now, and you get the Aspiring Sorcerer. You can hide them maybe. So that's not too bad. You could take some cheap squads to fill your patrols or battalions. What I think is interesting is a lot of the Demon Princes really got brought up to the cost of the Tzeentch Demon Princes, which was 195, and now if you take 2 Talons, it's 200. I run them with swords anyway. But the Exalted Sorcerers got a lot cheaper, and Ahriman on a disc barely went up. He went up more on foot. Sorcerer and Terminator armor went up by 5 points, but that's not bad because all the Force weapons are now free. Force Stave, Force Sword. So actually got cheaper. And a lot of other units, like Chaos Spawn didn't go up that much. Helldrake didn't go up that much. Magnus did go up by 20 points, but he was already 445, so comparatively it's not that much, and now you can reserve him. So there's a lot of people have made good commentary, and Goonhammer is a page I've really come to like in the last year. They're the only ones, other than, I think me, that really consistently give a lot of good Chaos analysis, plus some of the professional tournament Chaos players who sometimes post articles, but most podcasts or websites that analyze competitive 40K or the game, I think almost always get everything wrong about Chaos or don't miss a lot of insights. It's one of the reasons I do this little hobby YouTube channel. But they pointed out a lot of good changes, and I think a lot of accurate changes about where the opportunities were missed. They pointed out that Thousand Sons did pretty well, and I tend to agree. The nice thing here is, even if you want to ally in Thousand Sons, 10 cultists went up in points, but Sorcerer and Terminator armor got cheaper. Familiar went up 1 point, but who cares? So an ally patrol only costs you 2 command points. You could take 2 Sorcerers and Terminator armors with Familiar, and you can take then you're only paying for 1 troop, so you're taking 2 HQ and a troop, and it costs you 2 command points. And you can even take the relic that lets you potentially get command points back, which a lot of Chaos armies don't really have access to. So it might even make you your command points back, especially now that everybody gets command points each turn, so the odds of that going off are going to be higher than they were before. So whether as a standalone army or as allies, I think Thousand Sons are looking pretty good. It's still kind of curious where's the meat going to come from in this army. Scarab Occult Terminators went up from 26 to 30, which is not great. And for the Sorcerers, Combi Bolters went up 1, but Inferno Combi Bolters did not go up. So I think on the whole, it's not bad at all. And the other thing that came out today that was a really big deal that I was worrying about when I was reading the preview articles on the Warhammer community website is I was worried because ever since they FAQ'd the Psychic Awakening that gave the Thousand Sons their new rules, they put this really restrictive rule in there that made it seem like, you can't take a relic from the new cults unless your warlord happens to be in that cult, so even if you have multiple attachments, you kind of got screwed. And then what happens if, Magnus is your warlord, especially in 9th edition? They previewed the new Supreme Command attachment where you could take him, but he has to be your warlord. And thankfully, they FAQ'd it. Someone pointed out, if they didn't realize themselves, that this was dumb. So now they FAQ'd it. You can still take the other relics, even with the Sorceress Arcana, even with, Magnus being your warlord, for example. So I think that's a really big difference, especially if you're planning on running mono Thousand Sons. So Thousand Sons still have that issue where they don't have that many different types of units that they really have, and Tzeentch Demons, like all demons, got completely screwed, I think, in 9th editions to open it up. I'll talk about that later. So that's a bummer. The one upside is Gaze of Fate is now better with being able to get that reroll. And I think as per the FAQs that are still up as of today, it's a single die, which now the command point reroll in 9th is only useful for a limited number of things, and it's all the dice. And so if Gaze of Fate will let you reroll 1 of your choice on your turn only, that makes it a really, really powerful spell in 9th edition. So being able to get access to that on on Magnus or the Demon Princes without having to ally in the Tzeentch Demons that are now pretty expensive, especially with their troops, I think that's a big advantage. So I think Thousand Sons did pretty well. I don't know if I'm going to run Magnus, but I will maybe give it a shot. So next up, Death Guard. I did a deep dive for over an hour maybe 2 weeks ago about War of the Spider and all the new stuff they got. And so if you're interested, go check that out on my channel. And please subscribe to the channel. Everything is free. I just do it in case it helps people. And that's by far my most watched video to date. My most watched video was just about 750, and this one's already in a week or so, or a week and a half, gotten over 1,300 views. So thanks everybody who watched that. I go into detail there about everything that I think is open for them now. So let me look at their points changes a bit to see what changed. Now, before I forget, I do want to mention that, and by the way, if you're in the chat, I see there's a couple of people here. Feel free to throw out your ideas or say if you agree or disagree. I appreciate people watching live. I know it's a bit late. I do want to mention in the FAQ for Death Guard that came out today, it looks like now, once again, Cloud of Flies can be used to protect characters from snipers. And I think that's going to be important for because most people are going to do one or two things. They're going to do Poxmongers with the new Psychic Awakening rules, where they're going to put what I think should be a Demon Prince, with wings or without, behind a bunch of Demon Engines for the 4-up Invulnerable Save and Arch Contaminator. But what if you just get sniped and you don't have the Warlord trait to regenerate your wounds, probably because you're probably taking Arch Contaminator? Well, if you can pop Cloud of Flies, even that Demon Prince can't be targeted by snipers anymore. So that's a big change from 8th edition. The other change, as far as I've been able to tell, and this is one of the things that I was watching out for today in the FAQs, and I was glad I didn't see it. I was really worried that they will put something back, which could still happen if there's a main rulebook FAQ day 1, we don't know. But after Death Guard had gotten their codex, maybe 6 or 10 months later, there was an FAQ because of a different stratagem from a different army and a different codex that people didn't like being used after Deep Strike. I think it was for, I don't remember if it was the Grey Knights or something else. And they changed it that you can't use end of the movement phase stratagems during the movement phase. So all of a sudden that impacted Death Guard because they had this old written codex that had different language and different wording than all the other codexes that came later. And basically what it did is it prevented you from using Cloud of Flies when you Deep Strike, because you Deep Strike at the end of the movement phase, and that FAQ, I don't remember if it was the designer's commentary or main rulebook FAQ, whatever it was, or one of the chapter approved, it made it so that you can't use that. And I don't think it was intended to block Cloud of Flies, but that's what it ended up doing retroactively. So then, if you've ever played Death Guard and you have Terminators, you know how annoying it is, because you can't use it before your opponent unless you start on the table, which you don't want to do because they're slow, and you go first. Because unlike the Alpha Legion or the Eldar strats that are always in your opponent's shooting phase or when they get shot, including the new ones in War of the Spider because they have modern wording, Cloud of Flies is at the end of your movement phase rather than anything reactive, which also meant you had to potentially waste it. You didn't even know if they were going to get shot at. So as far as I can tell, because we're now moving to a new edition and we don't have an FAQ like that yet, it seems to me like once again, Cloud of Flies is on the table if you Deep Strike in. So I'm going to experiment. My Blight Lords, the way I run them, are too expensive, but they only went up by 12 points for a squad of 10 compared to how I was running them before, because it cost me 488 points to run 2 Flails of Corruption and 8 Bubotic Axe and Combi Plasma. And now, when you take into account Combi Plasma going down 1, and then some of the other changes, Flails of Corruption, unfortunately, for Plague Marines or Blight Lord Terminators went up from 10 to 15 points each, so in my opinion it's now really more worth it on just the Blight Lords. That means that overall I'm now about 500, I think exactly 500 for 10, rather, so it only went up by 12 points. So I'm going to give that a shot and see if it's worth it, since they went up so comparatively little to everything else in the game, or almost everything else, that I can once again Deep Strike them in starting turn 2 and immediately Cloud of Flies. So I'm going to watch in 2 weeks to see whether there's an FAQ that reintroduces that or not. Because it didn't seem to be in anything that was released today, including the Death Guard FAQ. So those are, I think, 2 big things that not everybody who plays Death Guard has realized yet about what came out of the FAQ. Yeah, Michael. Michael said, I think you can use Magnus and refund a battalion of demons with the Slanesh patrol and have 5 greater demons with Magnus for 2 command points. Demons could be a thing. Yeah, it could be. I need to spend more time thinking about what you can do with demons for patrols. Right now, I'm really tempted to stay away from almost everything demons because of Psychic Awakening didn't help them that much for stratagems. I think the Exalted Greater Demons, you can't afford anymore to spend 3 command points per demon, Greater Demon, and might be FAQ'd anyway. One thing I have considered is with Death Guard is taking a patrol, either as my primary attachment or my second detachment, with a Greater Demon, probably with a Bell, to try to bring back the Mephitic Blight Haulers, which I think are great now, and I went all over that in my episode 7 about War of the Spider. I think 3 Mephitic Blight Haulers are going to be in every list I make now. They basically went down in points a few points, so they're like 100 points each now in 9th edition, which is amazing for their stats. Mortarion went up to 490 from 470, which he didn't need to go up at all, but at least he didn't go up much. Well, all right. 2 Mephitic Blighthaulers that are in range of the Poxmonger's Furnace Relic, it's 20 wounds, toughness 7, 3 up save, 4 up invulnerable, 5 up feel no pain. That's the same stat line as Mortarion, except it's 2 more wounds, and that's for 200 points instead of 490. So I think people don't realize how good those are just for that, much less everything else that I went into detail on. And so being able to bring them back when they're already hard to remove with the 4 up invulnerable, and then you can heal them if you bring the Fleshy Abundance from a Greater Demon, and then you can also now heal them D3 when they kill a unit in close combat, which I think they're capable of doing, especially if they put -1 AP on everything, including when they fight melee with their aura. So I think that those are really good, and so I'm considering Chaos Demons, Nurgle Demons, as an ally for Poxmongers. But that's really the only thing I'm looking at right now. But back to Death Guard. There's a lot of changes. I'll talk about what stood out to me. I was making a lot of practice lists the last few weeks, guessing at what the changes were going to be, and everything I made pretty much fits, in some cases even with a little room to spare. So, the big things, which if you play Death Guard, you've probably already heard. Plague Burst Crawlers went up by 30 points, which is really unfortunate. And then on top of that, you gain 6 points if you're using the Flamers, and then, depending what else you're putting on there, you maybe lost some points on the turret gun. So if you're running the double Flamer with a cheap gun, you went from 140 to 160. So, 140 to 170. So a 30-point jump, which is quite large. And so I still think it's good to run 3. I think that increases more than it should have been. But considering that they got a lot better with the blast rules for the mortars, moving and shooting, the 4 up invulnerable save, at least they also got a lot better while they got more expensive. Because a lot of things in the new edition just got more expensive without necessarily getting better. So it's okay, I think, but this does add to my strategy of wanting to run 2 patrols. I'm torn between using a single battalion of Death Guard in 9th edition or 2 patrols and taking 2 different plague companies. The benefit of it being 30 points more expensive is this really adds to my strategy that I'm contemplating of my Poxmonger's detachment just being a patrol, my primary detachment probably, and then you only get 2 heavy slots, so maybe only take 2 of them, and then take 1 fast attack slot for the 3 Blight Haulers. So, it's not all bad. So that's one of the biggest things. Hey Zachary, thanks. Hey Bullfrog, appreciate you guys joining. I covered Thousand Suns earlier. Generally said that I think they came off really well and why, and some stuff in FAQ. I poured one out earlier for Renegades and Heretics not being in the Forge World points update, so I think they got Legend pretty hard, just like a lot of Chaos stuff, which is a bummer. I have a lot of Renegades and Heretics, but it is what it is. I don't know. Renegades and Heretics, they got screwed anyway, because I remember, I have like 3 Siege of Rax books, and I have the limited edition, like 7th edition Siege of Rax. I have all the posters, and the 7th edition rules that came out on day 1 were clearly written in 6th edition because the rules didn't even make sense. And then all the points were terrible after the index is in 8th, and so I maybe at least they're admitting that they forgot about the army. So whatever, right? But anyway, back to Death Guard. Plague Burst Crawlers got hit hard. I still think it's okay. Cultist going up sucks. Poxwalkers going from 5 to 7, also a 2-point increase, also sucks. The only thing I'll say there is not being able to fail morale for a 10-man squad. It's pretty good in New Edition. It's a little easier to hide if you're like behind a forest or something. Not necessarily if you're in the ruins, but you might not want to be because Poxwalkers don't benefit from cover really anyway, so why not? The other nice thing about Poxwalkers is they're going to not run until the last guy is dead, and you can take actions now to score secondaries in 9th edition And so having guys that stick to the last man and maybe even being able to hide it once they get down to a few guys, that's really cool. You can't string them out as much anymore, but that doesn't really matter. So all the troops in the game that are like cheaper kind of got screwed, except if you play Space Marines. Games Workshop loves you, and they want their stock price to continue to go up. And so all the Primaris stuff is really undercosted now because they realized Primaris being too expensive was bad for business, so now they're too cheap. And so every troop in the game now is bad compared to Intercessors because they're 20 points a model for Space Marines with 2 attacks, 2 wounds, and all the other goodies plus combat doctrines. So nothing competes with that, but among the baseline infantry, 7 points for Poxwalker is not great, but it's not as bad and didn't get screwed as much as some armies. So I will say that. Most of the characters only went up a little bit, which is great. Typhus thankfully only went up 10 points. He didn't go up to 165. He didn't go back to his idiotic cost from the Codex at 175. And most of the characters, very modest increases in points, 5 or 6 points, which is really nice. The Foul Blightspawn went from 77 to 85, which I think is fine. He's worth it, especially with the new stratagem for rolling dice and picking the higher one for a number of shots and for the strength. So that's nice. And one strategy I actually have that I just came up with today is, a patrol detachment primary of Poxmongers with the 3 haulers, a Demon Prince, maybe on foot now, because Demon Princes did go up quite a bit. It's now 195 or 200 with Talons if you want to wing Demon Prince instead of 180 for Death Guard or 165 for Chaos Space Marines. Basically same price as a Thousand Suns one. So now foot versus winged is a difference of 35 points. And it moves 8 inches anyway. You're advancing. It doesn't really have a gun. You could put the flamer on it if you want. And the haulers and the Plagueburst crawlers only move 10. And they don't want to advance usually. They want to shoot unless you're trying to get in range with the flamers. So you don't really need to be winged if you're a Demon Prince with a relic keeping up with your vehicles. So I think I'm probably going to run them now on foot to save those 35 points because that is quite a lot. But other than that, the characters came off, I think, pretty well. And what I'm thinking is in that other patrol I was mentioning, it's going to probably be the Ferryman to get the +1 to hit stratagem on the Blight Lords when they come down to shoot Kami Plasma. Won't save them from overheating anymore, which is, F for, now they overheat and kill themselves, even if I have a +1. So that sucks, but at least now I no longer need to ally in for prescience on the shooting phase. I still wish I had the +1 in the melee, in the fight phase, with like I did with prescience, or that I could at least use it again in the fight phase, because I want to trigger Death to the False Emperor on a 5-up, especially when using those flails, because each proc is not an extra attack, it's D3 extra attacks with the flail, just like Mortarion when he's using his other scythe profile. But at least I get the option to shoot better with it when I come in and I kind of go all in with them. And the other benefit there is with the Ferryman, you get this 2 command point stratagem, and with that stratagem, I'm trying to pull it up on my phone now. You extend the range of your auras by, I think, 7 inches. Let me double check to make sure that's correct. Yeah. Start a movement phase, so I think you can use in your opponent's phase. Until the end of the turn, range of the aura abilities is increased by 7 inches. And I'm planning to have one Ferryman Foul Blightspawn. And so you probably all know by now, it was even on the Warhammer community article, that after charging units, the defending player now goes first with the non-charging units. And so if you take away your opponent's charging, whatever charge the Foul, Blight Lords or whatever near your Foul Blightspawn is actually going to go fight after the after the Blight Lords. And so being able to extend that bubble from 7 inches to 14 inches and surprise your opponent with that, I think is really huge to pull out. And you can even, if you wanted, buy him a relic, the Fulgaris Helm or whatever it's called. So then you go to 10 inches base with another 7 is 17 inches. And on the new smaller table size, which actually lost 25% of the surface area of what used to play on an 8th edition, 14 inches or 17 inches, a guy in the middle of the table, a Foul Blightspawn, who pops it at 17 inches, is covering almost the whole table, really, unless you're in the very corners. So that can really surprise someone. And so I think that's worth doing. And so that's one of the reasons I'm toying around with these ideas of different patrols. So I think 85 points for Foul Blightspawn is worth it. Yeah, Bulldog. Yeah, I know. The Xenos players, it's so funny. This morning, I'm still friends with my friends from Houston who play Warhammer 40,000, a lot of great players in Texas, and we chat on Facebook Messenger almost every day, and one of them has spent the entire quarantine painting like a 1,500 point expansion to his Gene Stealer cult, and Gene Stealer cult kind of got screwed the most of any army, and Eldar seemed to get hosed. So I like to complain about Chaos. I'm a Chaos fanboy. I'm wearing my new T-shirt from the Warhammer merch store, which shipped from the Netherlands. But I recognize some of the Xenos races really got hosed. I don't feel that bad for Orcs just because they have the bullshit Psychic Awakening. Plane explodes and does 3 mortal wounds to everything in your whole army, basically stratagem. But I feel bad for some of the other armies. Going back to Death Guard to try to wrap it up, Fetid Bloat Drone got more expensive again, which is sad. I don't know if I'm going to use them. Death Shroud. I was really surprised today that Death Shroud got hammered. They went up by 7 points a model. The Man Reapers went down 2, so they went up by 5 points a model. At first I was really disappointed because already people didn't really take them. And so why would you hammer them more? But I thought about it some more, and while I think they should have gone up less, I think I'm still really considering using them, especially if I'm not only taking 1 detachment, 1 battalion of Death Guard. Because if I'm not taking that extra Ferryman detachment to get the +1 to hit on the Blight Lords for their shooting, I'm going to just take 5 Death Shroud instead. Because when you take 5, that gives you the ability to kind of avoid the damage of blast weapons. Or you can put them in a different patrol and then take the company, the Plague Company, that gives them the ability for 2 command points for 5 to reduce all damage by 1. And of course they have the amazing new stratagem that I talked about 2 weeks ago about adding 1 to their damage rolls, and they hit like trucks. They don't need the +1 in shooting phase. Their weapons are their melee weapons are plague weapons. Their flamers are plague weapons. They can now shoot the flamers on deep strike because you can spend 1 command point to bump it from 6 to 12 inches. They benefit from the AP1 on those flamers if the Blight Hauler is nearby. So I think there's a huge amount of things you can do with them. And if you look at the new points, the Blight Lord Terminators are now 35 points base. The Death Shroud are 32. So they're still, okay, Blight Lords are a little overpriced, but for what you get, they're not that much crazier than some other Terminators. I don't know. I think Death Shroud and Blight Lord should be 3 points cheaper each, but, and then the Man Reapers now being 15 points, yes, that's maybe too expensive too, but if you look at the points changes, they also bumped up Power Fist from 9 to 10 points, so it's high, but they want to be in 5-point increments, and there's a lot of benefit to a Man Reaper, so it's not that crazy to be at 15 points each. So that's one thing that I'm really thinking of, is maybe taking more of these Death Shroud, especially if I don't want to take all the Blight Lords, or I get sick of killing myself with plasma. The last thing that I want to mention is Chaos Spawn, and the thing about Chaos Spawn is they're already pretty points efficient at 20 points each. Now they're up to 23 points each for 4 wounds, toughness 5. They come with 5 up save, which isn't terrible. They only move 7, but they're actually pretty good in combat. People don't realize they're AP2 and 2 damage. And then they get that random benefit of either getting, rolling 2 dice for attacks. They benefit from Hateful Assault, so on the first turn it's D6 plus 1 attacks each. And the other thing is, now in 9th edition, I don't know how many of you have really, done a deep dive into the new rules, but if probably like me, maybe a lot of you who are Chaos players who have beasts or other things or cavalry or swarms like Nurglings, it sucked so fucking much, basically, to have Nurglings and you deploy them and you can't move them out of the fucking ruins or a magic box, with ITC rules. Why not? They're smaller than infantry, but they couldn't do it. Well, now in 9th edition, those swarms and those beasts, they can go through walls like infantry if it's breachable. If a building is scalable and the infantry can go up the levels, so can beasts, and so can swarms. So all of a sudden, all these Chaos Spawn that used to be stuck outside or stuck on the bottom floor, they can go inside. They can go grab stuff. And I like that mix with Poxmongers because my Blight Haulers and my Demon Prince and everything, they're not going to be able to get in those ruins. And otherwise I just have Terminators or whatever else I brought, maybe some Plague Marines. But now these Chaos Spawn can do it. And 5 of them are 115 points. You spend 1 command point pre-game, and now you give them all a Feel No Pain, which is great on those 20 wounds that are toughness 5. And the other thing I'm thinking of doing is bringing a Noxious Blightbringer with the new Relic. That's a 7-inch aura of a 5-up invulnerable save, because giving those Chaos Spawn also 5-up invulnerable save against shooting attacks or melee attacks makes them even more annoying. And they only move 7. Noxious Blightbringer only moves 5. So, it's not bad. I might send 10 of them with 1 Noxious Blightbringer, and I really, on the first turn, probably want to advance them to try to get on an objective and start scoring it. And being able to roll 2 dice and pick the highest from Noxious Blightbringer is really helpful anyway. So, that's one thing I'm really looking at. And so, those are some of the things that stood out to me. People are talking about Possessed with Death Guard. I think it's possible. But, Possessed, just like all the Terminators, really got hurt with a +1 being capped at, with a 2 wound being maxed at +1. So you can no longer get to doing mortal wounds on 5s and 6s with the Contagion Psychic Power. It's only going to be on 6s from now on. So, that's rough. I'd rather have good melee weapons to begin with. The other thing about Chaos Spawn that might be interesting is one of their 3 abilities is, reroll wounds, but even if you don't get that, you can bring a Plague Caster or a Plague Surgeon or a Chaos Lord with a Bolt Pistol with a Worm Spitter Relic, which actually has longer reach. You move 5, you shoot 15, you can extend it. Not a big threat range there. And the Chaos Spawn hit on about how in the new... unless they bring out a day 1 FAQ, unless they bring out a day 1 FAQ to reintroduce it, they've dropped what was in the main rulebook FAQ for 8th edition about end of the movement phase stratagems, or during the movement phase stratagems not being able to be used at the end of the movement phase, which is when you would deep strike in. So we have to wait on and see on that, but I think it might be possible to deep strike in on turn 2 and then immediately Cloud of Flies again, which I think is great now with the Poxmongers being in front with all those demon engines that are tough to get rid of. You can either come in behind them and then also benefit potentially from, if you don't want to Cloud of Flies, from the cover bonus from the haulers. Or you can deep strike in on one of the flanks, because a lot of the missions will probably have objectives on, you need to go for 2 different ones in the middle and they're on opposite sides or corners. You can just deep strike kind of on whatever side is opposite the opponent's heavy shooting weapons with your stuff in the center, all your demon engines, and then Cloud of Flies. So that's one thing I'm looking at, and I'm going to keep an eye on that. Thanks, 7NF. Yeah, I love my color scheme. If you haven't seen it on Facebook for Hexfleet Virilis, I have the whole album sticky there. It's the first post, painted by GMM Studios and sculpted and converted by me in my color scheme, which I'm really happy how I came up with. But anyway, that's enough for the Death Guard. I'm going to try to go through Chaos Space Marines, Chaos Knights, and Chaos Demons. So, Chaos Space Marines, I haven't looked at them as much as I have the points for some other armies. I think in general, Chaos Space Marines were struggling a little bit. A lot of the changes I talked about for Death Guard kind of are similar to Chaos Space Marines. For the most part, the characters didn't really go up that much. Some of them did a little bit. Master Possession went up by 15, which I think was really unnecessary. people already didn't really take them that much. But again, these force weapons going from 10 or 8 to 0 makes up for that a little bit when you consider how much other things in the game went up. Probably where they got hammered the most is a Demon Prince with Wings went up 30 points. And it went up 35 if you want to take Malefic Talons, which are now 15 points instead of 10 points like the other weapons. One benefit to being Chaos Space Marines is you have the amazing demon weapon relics that I went over in, I think, episode 6 of Warp Surge Radio, whenever I went over my Faith and Fury review, and those are really good. And so you can have access to those, several of those on a Demon Prince, and still save yourself those 5 points if you really want. I still think Sorcerers with Terminator armor, they went down a little bit compared to everything else because the weapon became free. Cultists and Chaos Space Marines, yeah, they got screwed. Chaos Space Marine, Chaos still doesn't have good troops. I don't know what more you want to say. They got a lot of points increases kind of across the board. One thing that really stood out to me is the Knocklith Crown only went from 80 to 85, and now that you can take it for free in terms of command points, as long as your Warlord is of the right faction, with the smaller table, a Knocklith Crown is worth looking at, and especially now that you can no longer use a command point to reroll only one of the dice on a psychic test. Always being able to reroll them when you're in range, I think, is going to be really nice. So I think Knocklith Crowns are comparatively better than they've been before. The big winner, I think, are Chaos Terminators. I went over in my Faith and Fury review how much I love Chaos Terminators. And I probably would have been playing them if I had them painted and we didn't have COVID the last 6 months. I think now they're 23 points still, didn't go up at all, and okay, so the Combi Bolter went up from 2 to 3 points. The Chain Axe didn't go up, but that's fine. They were already really good. I really like the Emperor's Children ones, where you can give them the extra, I think, toughness if you want pregame for a squad of 10 for 2 points. And I mean, Combi Plasma went down, so if you were taking 10 of them with axes and Combi Plasma, they actually just got 10 points cheaper, which is really unbelievable. And of course, if you bring Emperor's Children, you can fire twice. You can bring Prescience. Now they can overheat, which is unfortunate. Everybody at Plasma has to deal with that, but still. But you can also just bring them with Combi Bolters and kill those small 5-man squads everywhere. So I like them a lot. And also Alpha Legion. I love Alpha Legion. I think you got such good rules in Faith and Fury. Being able to come down and make yourself not be able to be hit with the Terminators, and all the other stratagems they have to get extra Warlord traits or to make things explode. You already can no longer reroll a vehicle explosion in the new edition, right? And so being able to, on top of that, when you want, make a vehicle explode on a 3+, you can really make sure someone has a bad day. So I think Emperor's Children or Alpha Legion are great. I didn't see anything in the FAQ that changed Alpha Legion to be cover rather than -1 to hit. So as far as I know, they're still -1 to hit. Oh, Edarian, what I mean with now you can overheat is in 8th edition, the way it worked is the overheating, killing yourself when you overcharged, was not on a was not on a die roll of 1. It was on a result of 1. So even if you had a +1, if you had a +1 to hit and no negative modifiers, and you shot, even if you rolled a 1 or you re-rolled into a 1, you didn't die because the die roll failed because the die roll is still a 1, but the result is a 2, and you only died on a result of a 2. It's just like if you had, I think psychic powers were the same way, where if you had a +1 and you rolled 2 1s with like Arimon, you still failed, but it didn't count as a double 1. I can't remember how they ended up doing it because they FAQ'd it a few times. But ultimately, what that meant is I could bring Prescience with Armon or something for my Blight Lords and overcharge them, and even if I got a 1 after any rerolls, they would live, and I couldn't die unless my opponent had a negative modifier. And now that's gone. It's gone for everybody. The 9th edition rulebook changed it to that they die on unmodified rolls of 1. So even if you have the modifier, if you end up with a 1 as a final result, you're going to lose those Terminators. So that's what I was talking about, which is pretty unfortunate. And yeah, Zachary, I saw that. That's the one thing I didn't mention about Thousand Suns at the start of the episode. Thousand Suns and Grey Knights, right now they don't have anything that lets them cast Infinite Smites without the penalty to -1 each time. Although, ironically, Games Workshop also messed up and didn't put it into the main rulebook that the same character can't cast Smite more than once. So until there's an FAQ, Magnus can come on a table from reserves for 3 command points and then immediately Smite 3 times. So it's kind of goofy. I'm hoping that's going to be something that's changed. I know they're going to change the Smite thing almost certainly day 1. But I wonder when they're going to add the Thousand Suns and the Grey Knights things back in. Honestly, I think they probably need to go back to all the FAQs that came out today and add more things. Thinking more about Chaos Space Marines, the other thing is, Obliterators got changed, and then they went to 115 from like 65, and then they went back down to 95, and suddenly they were great. In my opinion, if people have been playing the last couple of months, I think everybody should have been running a bunch of, Slaanesh, Alpha Legion Obliterators and double firing them and being -1 or not targetable or whatever. And now they're like halfway up. They're at 105, which it's a hefty increase per model, but it could have been worse. So I still think Obliterators are good, especially because everybody being so much closer crammed together on this small table. And if you're in Ruins now, the equivalent, it's real line of sight if you're inside. So you can get the cover now with all these guys hiding in buildings, but you can see people through the windows now, even on the ground floor. That ITC rule about things on the ground floor blocking line of sight, that's gone for competitive play. So you can come down somewhere on the table and probably be able to shoot whatever you want. So I think that's pretty good. I don't know why they made Venom Crawlers more expensive. I haven't looked to see if their war gear changed to make them cheaper. Mauler Fiends went up by 20. From 110 to 130. So that really unnecessary. They're already bad. Chaos Rhinos only went up 10 point, which I think is fine. Especially now with, having to go for the objectives with actions. Death Guard, I forgot to mention, you can give them that Feel No Pain for 1 command point. And you can be in range of that Talisman Relic for the 5-up Invulnerable save. So I think Death Guard Rhinos are the better ones if you're willing to invest command points. Abaddon only went up 10 points from 210 to 220. So that's good, especially because now command points are hard to get. So I think Black Legion isn't awful, but I still think Alpha Legion is really the best. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what people would really want to run in an army. Yeah, Michael, Lord Discordance did get hit hard. I'm staring right now at 3 of them on my shelf that I've built for a while, and that I'm waiting to do, bring on my commissions to my commission artists. And so having built these three and then them getting hit so hard when they're already pretty fragile, I think that's a big over nerf. It's typical, when Chaos does anything good, Games Workshop will nerf it, and most time when Chaos does something good, it's good by accident, like the Chaos Spawn and Death Guard. So it is what it is. I don't know, might still be worth running, but now that it's more expensive to ally in Slaanesh Demons, which I love to do for the aura that they can advance and charge automatically, I don't know. And you still want to pay command points or specialist attachment, I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out. They are better on the smaller table. They can charge, things can't hide as easily, so we'll see. I think Chaos Space Marines is kind of a question mark. I think they need something else at the moment, but they do have a lot of rules in the supplement. And the other thing that I have considered doing is bringing a Word Bearer's primary, like a Bare Bones Patrol, and then spending almost all my points in a second patrol of Death Guard. And the reason being, I could take a Word Bearer's Terminator Sorcerer, which now got a little cheaper, and then the 10 cultists, which got a little more expensive, and that's my whole patrol, but it's my primary. And my warlord is that Terminator sorcerer. And then I give him the Wordbearer's Relic, that's amazing, where he can get +1 to cast, and he knows an additional power. So now he's Ahriman when he's casting, and for much cheaper, and he can deep strike, and he's more survivable. And then on top of that, the Wordbearers have the stratagem that when you fail a power, you can spend 1 command point, he takes a mortal wound, and the power goes off automatically. If you want to come in and death hex something, he doesn't get the extra range of Ahriman, or 1,000 Suns Terminator Sorcerer, or the Familiar, but otherwise, that's amazing for a really cheap price point. And you can also, you can give him Warlord trait to heal wounds, which is great if you don't want him to get sniped. Or get hurt from all those mortal wounds if he uses that stratagem. Or you can take the Warlord trait where he gets D3 command points at the start of the game. And so you're going to average 2, so on average you're going to pay for that second patrol just from that. So, those little things here and there might end up being good for allying in somebody. Alright, Chaos Knights and Chaos Demons. Chaos Knights, I don't have that much to say about them yet. They did get nerfed a little bit. If you're taking a pair of... Well, here's the thing. War Dogs, first of all, only went up from 145 to 150. And so, that's really not that bad at all. The War Dog autocannons went up from 5 to 10 each. So you're paying 15 more points for that War Dog than you were before. So, not great. The Heavy Stubber went up from 2 to 5 points, which is stupid because that goes on a lot of Knights and it goes on to Helverins. So, not great, but it's not that big of an increase, especially because they got decreased a lot the last time around. And we just got a bunch of rules in Engine War that gave them stuff for free. So I don't think it's that bad. And the Inferno Cannons, they went up a good bit. They went up 20 points each from 55 to 75. But paying 40 more points on that night when everything else went up a lot, it hurts. But on model that expensive, proportionally, it's not that bad. And the other thing is the Avenger Gatling Cannons, they went up, if you're taking one of them, it only went up 5 points. If you're taking 2 of them, it went up 30 points. So that's a lot. However, if my memory serves, I'm pretty sure the Avenger Gatling Cannons are the ones that have the Heavy Flamer. Well, the Heavy Flamer went from 14 points to 0, and each Avenger Gatling Cannon came with one. So you're going up 30 points. You're going down 28 on that pair. The Heavy Stubber went up 3 points. And then the Iron Storm Missile Pod, which is what I would put on top of all of them, went up from 16 to 15 points. And if you take the Melt-A-Gun, it actually went from 14 to 10. So now I might as well pay 5 more points than a Heavy Stubber and take the Melt-A-Gun on that front weapon. And that's great. I mean, you do have the spoiler went up 25 points base. So that hurts. But it's not that much for a Double Avenger Gatling Cannon Knight. I don't know. The Knight Tyrant, I'm not going to talk about that because no one knows what's going on with that because the Castellan got a lot cheaper for Imperial Knights and then the Knight Tyrant didn't. So I'm not sure. Bulldog, earlier I have in here ginger beer and some ginger ale and triple sec and some sort of tequila. I have El Jimador tequila. I brought it with me to pour one out at the start of the episode for the Renegade and Heretics players who are not in the Forge World points. So I think they got legend. I know it's a copper mug for Moscow Mules, but here the being Chaos players, we don't follow any rules anyway, so I'm going to put my tequila in whatever the hell I want. So that's Chaos Knights. I'm going to wait to see. The good news is now, you're going to get, your full 12 command points. You can have probably still 3 knights and 2 war dogs in a detachment. You get the free rules now from Engine War, and you're probably going to have more command points to play with because you're going to start with 12, and then you're going to get 5 over the course of the game. Now that the game is 5 turns, and you get 1 automatically, so you're probably going to have way more command points than you did before, especially if you're running, pure knights. And now you don't have to waste points on bringing allies. It's nice to see it on objectives, but it will kind of depend on what the missions are. So I'm cautiously optimistic about Chaos Knights, and we'll see what happens to the Knight Tyrant. That brings me to my last army. If you're tuning in late, I covered Thousand Suns, Death Guard, Chaos Space Marines, Chaos Knights, and now I'm going to Chaos Daemons. This is the one that I'm the most frustrated by. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm going to a GT this weekend to say goodbye to 8th, and I'm bringing a totally crazy list. Let me get that out of the way. That spends 18 command points pre-game to give 3 exalted, all 6 exalted traits to all 3 greater demons, and give them each an exalted relic, because we still don't have FAQs for most Psychic Awakening books. I could still do that. And I'm really sad that this might be the last time in a long time that I end up playing Chaos Daemons. Just looking at the points here online, because, there's a nice guy who put out a spreadsheet that has all the points changes. It's like they finally made something somewhat playable. And like Comported Epitome was already too expensive, $195. It went up to $210. A lot of Chaos players probably know that bafflingly, I don't know if Games Workshop screwed up, and now when this points increase, they screwed up again, which they've been so bad with Chaos armies and Chaos Demons, especially with this edition. They can't even get the data sheets right, the 14 times they've reprinted Slash Demons. And with the Tzeentch Demons, they brought them down a bunch 2 point increases ago, and so like a change cast went down to like 65 when it used to be 78. It was still not great, and then all of a sudden it went up to 78 again for no reason in the latest chapter approved, and now that was the baseline to increase all the points again. So now like a change caster is 85. So it used to be 65 like 6 months ago, or a little over that, and now it's 85, which is more expensive than it ever was, or at least maybe since Index. So a lot of this is just bullshit. Chaos Demons have been getting screwed almost the entire edition. They were just allies. The only good thing they had was really Plague Bearers, and those went from 7 then to 8, which was already too much with all the support characters you needed to bring, and now they went up to 9, and I don't know, do you really want to pay that much? I don't, especially now. They're only good if you take them in large numbers. The minimum squad size is 10, so you're getting hurt by blast weapons. Now blast weapons are really, hammer you hard if you're too large. So 7 to 8 points on bloodletters. The ones who are the worst off are the horrors. Pair of Brimstone Horrors used to be 2 points and a 4-up invulnerable save. Now it's 5 points. Then it went up to 3 points, and now it's 5 points. It's still a 6-up vulnerable save. They're still garbage. Minimum squad size is 10, so you're going to get hurt by blast weapons. Can't hide inside the walls of runes anymore, really. That really just kills it. It kills you. The only 2 good things Chaos Demons had were some of the HQ choices and the troops. And the troops now got hammered into the ground. Games Workshop made you buy all these demon troops by giving you all these new bonuses in the last edition, where if you're above a 20 or more in a unit, and now you get screwed if you do that. Points and by blast weapons. So I don't know. It's just amazing how Games Workshop doesn't know what to do with demons. The Codex was really flawed, had a lot of issues, a lot of redundant units in the fast attack and elite slot, and in the heavy support. Almost all units went up. Keeper Secrets were good briefly, and now they went up a couple, 20 points, and on top of that, like 4th time they've done data sheets, the last year and a half for them. They're suddenly down from 14 inches movement back down to 12. So it's just kind of amazing how badly Games Workshop keeps screwing over demons. And I just think there's no one in that design team that cares or knows what they're doing. Because there's so many things that were fundamentally wrong from a design perspective with the Chaos Daemons Codex from the very beginning that it's just really baffling. And, they don't have interesting datasheet rules. The units are redundant. You need to deep strike to do anything. You don't benefit from cover. Now at least there's some cover that gives you -1 to hit. It's expensive to deep strike. It's just really weird. Zinch demons have alpha locus rules and psychic powers. There's no chapter tactics. There's no sub legions. Sub chapter traits. There's only these loci, and to do that you have to all be the same demon. So you always need 2 or 3 detachments. Except now you can only take 1 detachment. Otherwise you pay a bunch of command points. A lot of their characters are overpriced. The greater demons, went up again, like 20 points each when they shouldn't have, because they're already, have barely become competitive at 250. So even if everything went up a lot, they probably should have stayed where they are. I don't know. At least now, I can do what I'm about to do in this upcoming tournament I'm going to this weekend, which is I have 18 command points to start the game, so I can make everybody 3 times exalted until that gets FAQ'd or whatever, which is like the only good thing about demons now. Well, if you only start with 12 command points, you can't really do that. So, rest in peace, awesome creature caster, demon models, makes me very sad. I love my models. They're all painted beautifully, and I have the special models, but I just don't know. I mentioned earlier that you could do some things with Great Unclean Ones, maybe, with some Death Guard, but, I just don't know. I can't find a silver lining with demons. All the stratagems were terrible. I think we all know they just need a new codex. In order to be interesting out the gate, they really needed, points to stay the same or even get cut. And instead they went up everywhere, in some cases by quite a lot. Plague drones were on the verge of being interesting again, and they kept bouncing between 40 and then like 34 and then 36, and now they're back up to 40, which is rough. Maybe they're still okay. I don't know. I don't know what Games Workshop is seeing no one else is, and of course now 30-point increase on the Demon Prince with wings. And 5 points on top of that if you bring double talons. Some of the heralds on chariots that came back with the chapter proof data sheets, those are actually not bad for their value, and some of them only went up by like 5 or 10 points. So I think a Herald of Slaanesh on Secret Chariot is actually really good still at 95 points. If you haven't looked at datasheet, you should. It's actually a good bargain. And if you take Kairos Fate Weaver, those extra command points are useful now. But a lot of the stuff is just really painful. I mean, at the end of the day, Keeper of Secrets with the points increase are not too bad. But the fact that they also lost their movement is rough. People have said that the Slaanesh Demonettes are not that bad with, they already brought down to 6 and other 7s, so they do comparatively have good stats, and now that you're on a smaller table, you might be able to reach people. So, that might be something, but in general, I think Games Workshop missed a chance to fix demons with Psychic Awakening, and it missed now the chance to fix demons with 9th edition points changes. In fact, probably made them worse off than before. I don't have a lot of good stuff to say about demons. I'm hoping something changes and that I'm wrong. But there is one good thing. Nurglings didn't change. Nurglings are still 18 points a model, which is great. You can summon them in. I might summon in a Poxbringer for my Poxmonger's Death Guard to heal all those demon engines that are now really tough. It only went up from 70 to 75, I think. Yeah, so that's not too bad. But again, Nurglings are also not quite as good as before in terms of screening characters because You know, now you got to have something close to the character. So I don't know. Nurglings are good for capturing objectives, especially now they can do things, but some of the actions can only be done by infantry. I will say I love that swarms can now go through the breachable walls and they can go up the floors of scalable buildings. That is a big improvement, and it is also interesting to think about bringing a allied or a primary patrol detachment of demons with a Great Unclean One, and then maybe a second Great Unclean One, or Epidemius, or a Poxbringer, and then your 2 troops are just 2 squads of 9 Nurglings, which I have 18 Nurglings painted, and then, you know, put them all on an objective, and they have the wounds to absorb all those blast attacks from like a whirlwind or something. And the other thing is they do have that stratagem now where for 1 command point for just that, you know, that turn, you get reanimation protocols. And on 5 up, you get a Nurgling base back. And so, you know, it could be kind of funny if you lost like 6 and you rolled lucky and you got back 3 or 4. And of course, the guy with the bell, the Great Unclean One with the bell, can bring him back. So Nurglings are still okay. I don't know. Spellpox Scrivener went from 95 to 100. He was already way too expensive at 95. No one takes Plague Bearers anymore. I just don't know what GW is smoking. Lord of Change can be good, you know, if you bring that deny psychic power thing from Psychic Awakening for the Exalted trait. But I do think if they don't FAQ it, it could be worth it to drop like 4 command points, or, you know, at least 3 command points on a Great Unclean One to bring it as an ally with a bell to bring back your Blight Haulers and make him, you know, make him, if you can still use him, get all the benefits, toughness 8, 4 feel no pain, give him the Exalted Relic that every phase he loses a wound, he can get 1 back, so then, you know, he could potentially gain 1 back in the movement phase, the psychic phase, the shooting phase, the charge phase, and the fight phase, on top of healing himself D3 with Fleshy Abundance. And so I played that at a practice game this past weekend for this upcoming GT, and, you know, that was really good. And some of the Exalted traits are not bad, like the 7-inch pick a unit, 3+ for every unit, a model in a unit that's a mortal wound. It's even good for chipping down characters with invulnerable saves that you're fighting. But other than that, I think that you're going to have a really hard time finding ways to bring some of this in. So, yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying in the chat. I feel bad for demons. I'm really frustrated, so this weekend is going to be my last chance to play with all those guys and just, you know, be goofy, have a good time. Gaze of Fate is still good on Tzeentch, so that's nice. But the Demon Prince is going up, is, you know, that many points, like 30 points for with wings, which is what you need to stay near your greater demons or, you know, your other guys. That just really sucks. Bloodletters got really hurt because you can't. They depend on wrapping, so you charge the 3d6 with them, and you wrap around stuff. You get a lot of attacks in. You move up really far. You hit a lot of units that were barely within 12 inches to declare. Then you roll 3d6 plus 1 charge out of the deep strike. Then you get your 3-inch move to tag guys. You move 3 inches after that. If you wanted, you could fight twice. You can't do that anymore. So there's no more reason to play Bloodletters either when they are on the verge of not being interesting in 8th edition by the end of it. So. I have such huge demon armies. I'm about to send all these Slaanesh models off. You know, I just made all these conversions. So you may have seen these on my Facebook page. You know, I took one of the original Creature Caster models and, you know, did some difficult conversion work there. To make kind of a cool, really tall, custom Keeper of Secrets. And then I did the same thing with the Raging Heroes Avatar of Shaw model, where I did a lot of, you know, creative and somewhat difficult conversion work all over the model, some of which is kind of hard to see. But these are going to be gorgeous when they're painted by GMM, and so demons getting hit like that when I'm about to send off a bunch of Slaanesh demons to get painted is pretty frustrating. I feel bad for the Chaos players who only have Chaos Demons, because I think it's going to be a rough go of it for a while. I think that's it. I've been going for a while. Did any of you have any other questions or thoughts in the comments? I tried to go over kind of everything I thought about the 5 armies and their points changes. I'm sure I missed some stuff that maybe is good or bad, but those are the main things. I did look at Forge World a little bit. I didn't have a point spreadsheet, but I looked at the Striking Scorpion video where he just reads some of the points changes, and quite a lot of things got indexed. My Fire Raptor is basically didn't change, but it's still as expensive as before. I think more expensive if you take the heavy bolters. Quite a lot of characters got legend, so you can't, legended, you can't use them anymore, which sucks. I think they're just really not supporting Forge World at all. The special dreadnoughts got points hiked into oblivion, which is fine with me because I don't own them, and I didn't want to rely on them to make Death Guard good or something like that. And then, the Forge World Greater Demons, they still have their idiotic points changes that they changed back a year or two ago to be goofy, 666, 777, and so on. Really stupid. I mean, I guess everything else went up, so maybe some of those are a little better than they were before. But they also comparatively lost value because you can't give them any of the exalted stuff, or any relic, or you can still give them whatever warlord trait you want, which is funny. But there weren't any new warlord traits in Psychic Awakening that I remember. So, yep, Zachary. Look forward to seeing you at the GT with my idiotic list. So I think I'm going to call it there. Feel free to leave comments in the YouTube if you enjoyed this video. It was a little longer than usual, but I hope it was worth everybody's time. Unfortunately, when I do this live stream, YouTube changed the algorithm to be a lot lazier, and I don't know if they just don't feel like paying for servers. Now it takes 24 hours after I end the live stream, or 48, for everything to be processed and be put online, as opposed to an hour. So it might take a while for this to go online, but if you guys want to continue the discussion, you could see in all my videos, I'm very active in responding to the comments, and maybe we can bounce around some ideas, in the comments here on YouTube or on Facebook. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and if you know other Chaos players, I encourage them to subscribe to this. Would love to come up with some good ideas with all of you about